welcome to a new Getting to Know Japan webinar. Thank you for joining us, and a big thank you to our program sponsor, the Japan Foundation New York, for funding this series and enabling us to put this on each week. Just a kind reminder to refrain from turning on your microphones during the duration of today's recording and presentation. Today, we are joined by Mr. David Yamato, who will be presenting on the art of manga. David Yamato is a lecturer at the Kansai Gaidai University Asian Studies program. He is also a researcher researching the history of manga and contemporary Japanese art at the Kyoto Seika University Manga Department under a Japanese government grant from the Ministry of Education. Besides his research work on Japanese art history, David is also an artist who teaches studio art courses to exchange students to Japan on how to create manga. Mr. Yamato, it is so nice to have you with us here this morning. I'd like to let you take it from here.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the introduction, and also I think Yokosuka Council for the invitation to present here today. The history of manga is a topic that I have been actually researching for many years, so it is really my honor to be able to be here to present my work with everyone. So without any delay, let us begin our talk on Art of Manga today. Let me just share my screen and works. Okay, so before we start talking about the manga in Japan, first I would like to talk kind of a little bit about, I think, our experience. I mean, in this case, I mean, America's experience with the manga and anime. Well, both manga and anime is a big part of the culture export of Japan today. Anime will likely be the term to be used by most of the people outside of Japan, especially those who came from the US. From what we have here are the industry expo, Anime Japan, to also over here the collaboration and advertisement during the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. Anime has been utilized in many Japanese government outreach programs for the promotion of the nation. Anime now have become this kind of umbrella term used to describe this illustrated and animated imagery coming out from Japan. Well, the development of the market of manga and anime, anime, really kind of just a shorten for the word animation in Japan, was kind of, in the US, it was kind of around the same time when this media and Dark Horse publication began to translate and distribute manga in the US during the 1990s. And for kids and for those of my generation who grew up in the 90s, who grew up really kind of like during the morning, they are always like broadcasting of anime in the Fox, I think around the 90s and early 2000. The easy access and early exposure of this art coming from Japan as the children on TV made most of the people associate this kind of type of Japanese art with animation more than the book format, the manga format. Although manga, may seem as kind of, in many ways, I think for America, as something secondary when it comes to accessing the content. By around year 2000, it wasn't hard to find them in, the local bookstore in the US, like Barnes& Noble. And I think it was like about 10 some years ago when I was still teaching middle school in Texas, manga have becoming very, very popular, I think, and also it has becoming a large addition of the school and also local library. An example of just how popular manga is today, I think this is kind of the case outside the US. Not long ago, while we are still in the middle of a pandemic, the French government actually hand out a small amount of digital currencies to those who are 18 years old to spend on culture-related good and service. At the end of that, I think the organizer of the server who run the kind of the digital purchasing app find out that about 2/3 of the book that the team purchased were actually manga. So really with the increasingly easy access to manga today, we begin to see more and more interest in manga, especially with the younger generation. That begs the question of just how manga was able to capture the interest of multiple generation. I think in the case of the US, I mean, like I mentioned earlier, uh, publication and also television, I mean, streaming service, millennial and Gen Zs, um, and also I think and beyond. For them, what is about manga uh, that allow what is about manga that allow it to be so popular on this I mean younger generation and along all other entertainment and art we have today. In this presentation, by looking into the history of manga and in its native soil in Japan, I will present you with a possible reason behind the captivation of manga to the reader. Hopefully, in this process will help you, I mean, allow you to kind of gain a deeper appreciation for this form of art. Manga has been one of an extremely popular form of art and entertainment in Japan for many, many generations. From the rental bookstore that was popular during the 1950 and 1960 to, I think nowadays you have the entire city, I mean, kind of city district dedicated to the culture surrounding manga and anime, such as Akihabara in Tokyo. Manga has always been an art that is very close to the everyday life here in Japan. In fact, according to art and manga critic Suyama Keiichi and Ito Ipe, in their article publishing in the fine art magazine Beaches Tejo in 1954, manga is an art that had the closest proximity to the people's life than any other foreign art. From newspaper, movies, poster, advertisement to children's book. Manga in many ways, I think it's kind of the same umbrella term as used as here as what in the US and also outside Japan when we use the term anime. Okay, so again, returning to the title of the presentation, Art of Manga. In this presentation, I will not be examining the particular expression or the meaning behind individual manga title, but rather the reason and the social context of their creation. Using the theoretical approach developed in 1964 after the rise of, I mean, artists such as Andy Warhol and Roy Lichtenstein. The art world theory, which define art with the environment where the art exists, is what I will be using, and I will focus on how people and artists relate to manga through its history. So by association, I mean many of us from the US learn to call the style of illustrated art coming from Japan was anime, regardless if the work is or not animated. However, as the history of manga predated animation, manga is the term that many use to call this style of art here, I mean, for a really long time. And historical and also academic study of manga, the term manga can further be divided into two more categories. Manga over here we'll see in the left written in the kanji form, the Chinese character, is used to describe the manga that for many of us will call cartoon today. And on the other hand, the manga written in katakana. With the same pronunciation, both of them are pronounced manga. But when it's written in this way, I think in say an academic paper or kind of manga history book, I think this format, I think this writing we'll be talking about manga that is more of a graphic novel or comics. Yeah, the other word we can use it, I guess comics. So now moving on. So what we have here is kind of like a further narrowing of the type of art within cartoon and comic manga category. Caricature or giga, political cartoon, and comic strip, and some even illustration will be categorized under the cartoon manga. Story manga and gekiga will be the two kind of graphic novel type comics that we are often associating manga with today. Well, another thing, interesting thing about manga, and also I think the term we use the term anime, is animation. Although today we will, unfortunately, we don't have the time to go over it today. I think for a really, really long time was called manga ega or the manga film. So the usage of word animation only came after 1960 with a group of experimental manga artists, I think, yeah, during the 60s. But yeah, manga was anime for a really long time was called a manga ega. So the history of manga began in the mid 19th century when Japan is going through a process of westernization, modern slash westernization after the forced opening of its port, by the US. On top of the Israel war, a witness of the colonization of Asian country in the West, Japan began this rapid transition out of its formal governing system into the one that is more in line with what's happening in the West. Cartoon and caricature from the West are where the history of Japanese manga began. Beside the governing system, social custom, technology, education, military, Western art were also one of the categories that Japan observed during the transition period um, of the mid 19th century. So they were either learning from the teaching artists such as Charles Workman over here or George Beagle, or going overseas themselves to study art. I mean, like the group of artists who create the magazine at the center, Maru Shimbun over here. Well, still, I think in this period, well, all of these work are not being called manga yet. But the three magazine over here are considered by many manga historian and manga researcher as the earliest example of what is to become manga in Japan. So before manga, the term ponchie was also used to describe the cartoon form from the West. This is publishing 1877. Maru Shimbun or the Maru News was a popular magazine during the late 19th century, modeled after the English satirical magazine The Punch, which with artwork by Japanese artists trained again. They were trained and by either the teaching artists who came to Japan, or they went to the West and to learn the art themselves. And also, I think interestingly, for this particular magazine, the teaching artists who came to Japan to teach the Japanese how to create art also participate in like the creation of the manual artwork in this particular magazine. And the style of art, the format of art, what we are seeing over here. So again, I think today what we will probably describe as cartoon these the format, although I think again during this time, this is not being called as manga yet. But later on, I think this format will continue and people will start calling this kind of type of art manga in the later period. So let's move on. So George Ferdinand Beagle, is a French painter, printmaker, journalist, and cartoonist. He was first hired by the military to teach drawing to the Japanese soldier in 1882. Was one of the key figure who help not only not only shaping what is to become the manga of Japan, in kind of teaching the many young artists, I mean, the technique of art and also cartooning. But also, I mean, like I said earlier, he is one of the artists who actually participate in the publication of Manga Shimbun by contributing a lot of artwork uh, in the magazine. And beyond that, I think really, I think Vigo's love and his care for the people in Japan, I mean, presenting in his work also help uh, to connect the manga of his time to the manga of the past and also manga of the future. And well, I mean, for Bigo himself, as we can see the example of his work over here. Well, following the kind of French caricature tradition, which satires those who are in power. And I think Bigo himself was actually extremely critical to on the westernization process of Japan. And this critical view, alongside, I guess, I mean, interestingly, I mean, for a kind of cartoonist, a care for and also respectful visual documentation of Japanese people in their everyday life. Um, Not only become a model for later manga artists, but also this critical view on the critical transition period of Japan also kind of give people in the later period a kind of critical view of what is going on, I mean, in Japan during the time. And Tobae, a satirical magazine created by Biko and sold to the resident in the foreign settlement around from 1887 to 1889, was the work of Biko that links the past history to the art uh, from the past and also to the future. So beside the influence of the content to the young artists later, as I mentioned, the title Tobai over here is how Biko paid tribute to the Japanese artists who create the cartoon-like work in the past, but got forgotten, I mean, during kind of this rush and push for modernization when people are kind of more interesting and punchy and the artist style in the future. Well, I mean, during the time, I mean, coming to Japan. And so the titles of Biko's magazine Tobai came from the name of 11th century monk Tobasho, who was said to be the artist behind a series of anthropomorphic animal caricature school called the Choju Giga. Well, different from what Biko is doing, I think, with the political satire and also the contemporary art, Biko's contemporary artists when they are doing political cartoon. The Giga over here, or when you translate into kind of playful imagery, doesn't really have at least kind of clear particular target to where I think the subject matter, either the animal, is criticized on. So while the function, I think, and also at the same time, the function for this particular piece is only, I mean, for the view of like really selected people, I mean, for the monks and also maybe the upper elite, but this is not a word, and this is, although if we consider the caricature aspect, the cartoon aspect, yes, there's connection. But when you think about the function of artwork, I think this is very different from manga of Biko's time or our time, which manga is kind of a commercial art that is kind of shared around people and viewed by everyone. But however, I think Tobae will later, this kind of playful imagery will later be incorporated into the ukiyo-e genre, as known as the Tobai, and this is where kind of Bigo kind of traces his root back to the Japanese art tradition. So now, moving on here, although it was really, I think, the previous co-worker, Imaizumi Ippio, who first came out with the term manga for cartoon. Kitazawa Rakuten, who began his career at the end of 1890, brought the term manga into the public conscious. And later on, I mean, for kind of bring sharing the manga to the Japanese society, he was known as the founding father of the modern Japanese manga. Known to be the first full-time manga artist, I think his greatest contribution to the art of manga was to bring cartoon to the various demographic group outside of, if we're looking at the tradition, what Bigo was doing, and also what is happening in Mama Shiman, mostly are uh, political satire and also political news. So what he is doing is, although he do have a magazine that focus on kind of political satire called the Tokyo Puck, but he also creating different magazine. I mean, that is, I mean, more, and the content is more for children's and also woman magazine. And by doing that, Rakuten actually took down a lot of barrier when it comes to what is being presented in manga, what is possible in manga, and really bring manga to, I mean, every Japanese in this process. And in this process, also, I mean, nurture, I think, by broadening out manga and what manga can be, really, and also by doing this, he also nurtured a lot of future manga artists. And one thing that is interesting, so when Imaizumi first came out with the term manga, the word was, I mean, it wasn't a word that most of the Japanese during the time were familiar with. In fact, I mean, the term was in the dictionary of the time labeled as a specialized word, I mean, describing the art genre. However, I think the term manga becoming popular when Fukuzawa Yuichi, an educator and newspaper publisher who was behind much of the modernization work during the time, saw the potential for manga to deliver information to the people. Fukuzawa hired Rakuten, and not only was his, I think the newspaper Fukuzawa is running the first newspaper to have manga on their page, but consider, I think, the difference between magazine and newspaper, the distribution power of newspaper really helped propel manga into the public conscience. There's more easier access to manga, I mean, by the daily newspaper. Okay, so other thing we have to, I mean, for those who are familiar with Japanese art, so although Imaizumi, I think, used the term to describe the cartoon of the time, but the word manga itself, the earliest usage of manga itself is actually came to, I think, the title of the work by ukiyo-e artist Hazushika Hokusai, and this particular work, the Hokusai manga, which was published at the end of Edo period. Although the drawing within, I think these are just, it's a big series of book, but these are kind of sum of what is inside the book. Although, I mean, when we look at the drawing over here, it does have a humorous and also playful aspect of Tobae. Um, but beside the manga, the kanji manga in the title, Hokusai manga isn't really what we would consider manga today, but Hokusai manga is actually an encyclopedia or a reference book for to teach ukiyo-e artists on how to draw various things. And the term manga came from common spoon bill. I think they're using the name from Chinese. So I think the reason why they use the term manga is the common spoon bill would say to be a bird they just like never start eating. So I think for Hokusai to create a series for, I mean, his purpose for this work is to never stop searching for imagery and collecting these images so people can have some kind of reference books to kind of work on their work. So the term manga came from that, but I think other aspect of the Hokusai manga that is make it different from either the Ponchie, the magazine, or Tobai Odo's magazine is this is actually an expensive book, and this is a like a guidebook encyclopedia is created for the ukiyo-e artists, not everyday light people. So moving on, well, the Japanese cartoon of the 19th century were very political charge under the influence of Western satirical tradition. After the attempted assassination of the emperor in 1910, the government began to censor manga with political content. And it was, but I think during this time, although there is a shift in terms of content, but it was actually it was during this time period when manga become truly the art of the everyday Japanese people. So rather than focusing on government policy or political figures, manga artists turn on to their reader and begin to create kind of the series of social satire focused on the daily experience of everyday people. And unfortunately, I think as Japan entered World War II, publication were under even more, strict control by the government. And for the manga artists to survive, most of them were forced to create propaganda for the wartime government. Alongside art and pretty much all other kind of creative profession, I think the wartime was considered as a blank period of the Japanese art. So it is during this time that political cartoon actually returned, but not function as something that criticize the government, but is really kind of just the caricature of, the ally nation. And other manga will either kind of, in a way, a promotion of patriotism or a guy kind of like more this educational manga actually begin in, during the wartime is kind of an instruction on how to keep yourself safe when, say, the cities are getting bombed, you are under attack. So something like this was happening during the war. So the end of World War One marks the beginning and the end of Japanese manga. While cartoon manga before the war was able to recover uh, its market after the war, the rising popularity of the new type of manga, comics, began to challenge the market domination of the old manga. This shift began not in the market of cartoon manga, which mostly was read by adult, but rather this new market of children's manga. Right after the war, when the wartime censorship was lifted, Akaho manga, or the red book named after the cheap reddish ink that was used to print uh, the cover of these book, were being sold all over in Japan. The as an inexpensive entertainment and also comfort for children who lived 2 years of war, and is within the Akaho that the contemporary manga we know today begins. And while Rakuten is known as the father of modern Japanese manga, Tezuka, who began his career at the end of the war with his Akaho manga, is being credited as the god of the god and also the father of contemporary Japanese manga. In the West, he is mostly known for his manga Astro Boy and Story of Buddha, but in his lifetime, he created more than 500 titles of manga, as well as creating pretty much the television animations in Japan. And Shin Takajima and Akahong manga drawn by Tezuka in 1947 was the first great hit after the end of war and a turning point for Japanese manga. Different from manga with only single panel or comic strip that format only goes on for few pages, Shin Takajima is a completely continuous story within the book. It was it was beginning as a hit in Osaka and later a national hit. A hit comics, a graphic novel in Japan. Seeing the kind of demand and market potential, manga market began to transition from cartoon into this format, the comic format, around the 1950s. And beside the manga he created, Tezuka also contributed greatly to the development of many manga genre we know today by supporting the career of many uh, young post-war manga artists, from assisting to sharing project with them at this apartment of manga artists, the Tokyo Azo. Tezuka inspired and helped to start a career of many giants of manga world, such as Ishinomori Shotaro and Fujiko Fujio. The support between artists continue generation after and build really the foundation of the manga industry that we know today. While the work of Tezuka and the popularity of comics after the war began the transition of manga, there were actually two more steps left before manga finally becomes something that we will recognize today. So with the demand for manga on the rise and the Japanese economy recover from the devastation of the war during the mid and late 1950s, moving away from cheaply made kashion manga or the rental book, and the money magazine become the way Japanese children consume manga. With better quality paper to keep book and shape for multiple usage, children in this period often gather around their local rental bookstore to rent and read manga together, making reading manga not only as a personal experience but a shared communal experience between friends and neighbors. Uh, Really, what put the nail in the coffin for the cartoon manga of the previous generation is really the rise of Gekiga during the Kashion era. As children raised by Tezuka, raised on Tezuka's manga that grow up with them, manga also grow up with them. So this new genre called Gekiga is known for its kind of seriousness and a lot of time often graphic depiction of the violent and also the challenged human condition. While carry on the comic format establishing by uh, Tezuka's manga, the writing star in Gekiga genre, such as uh, Shiato Sanpei and Tsuge Yoshiharu, differentiate their work by stripping the need for the sense of humor within both their artwork and storytelling. Having this new manga, for grown-up cartoon manga, which was also called otona manga or adult manga, start to lose its footing within the manga market during that time. The final step, that complete the transition of manga from into the comic format, as we know today, is the rise of Monday Manga magazine. Well, magazine for children with manga in it have been there since the early 20th century. Comics manga only began to appear later. The entire magazine just with manga only began to appear around the first started at 50, but most of them start around the 60. So with Japanese economic fully recovered by the 60, people can can now start demanding more manga. So different from the complete single issue manga where you get it from the rental bookstore, with the Money magazine, people were able to sample a part of the manga they like once every month. So kind of observing the success, from the independent, Kashion publisher who are publishing manga like this, you start seeing major publisher begin to, create their own magazine around this period as well. So Shonen Jump and also Ribbon were also publishing around this period. Well, many of the major manga magazine recognize, are being creating during this time. artists will also begin to experience with their work by creating their own magazine. Although Gekiga had been a revolutionary manga genre since its beginning, created by artists, the main artists such as Shiato Sanpei. Monday magazine manga Gado allowed the artists to have like seemingly no restriction on what they can and cannot create. As a result, becoming this magazine become a playground for many artists to creating a lot of groundbreaking work. And some of the most highly regarded manga artists in Japan, such as Mizuki Shigeru and Tsukeyo Sharu, all contribute their work in this magazine. And the publication of Galo also caught the interest of the fine art world as well. With the highly detailed, surreal storytelling, art critics such as Ishiko Junzo begin to argue for the recognition of their artistic value. We are almost done. Come, the magazine created by Tezuka Osamu, also becoming a kind of testing ground for many of artists who follow Tezuka's step. Although the magazine was short-lived due to the bankruptcy of Tezuka's studio in 1973. During its short run, like the apartment where Tezuka brought out many of young artists, this magazine also became a place that helped raise many of the great artists of Japan. Like Rikiga and Garo, Tezuka may come a magazine for mature reader, but also as a kind of there's also a rivalry going on against Garo for Tezuka to continue his brand of a manga. While the Gekiga style increasingly turned into more realism, Tezuka's story manga kind of still keep and maintain the kind of stylization what you see in the traditional cartoon. Manga was in 1980 almost replaced by the term Gekiga, but at the end, it is the war manga that we still use today, likely due to kind of the manga artist Tezuka raised over the years. And when I talk about Tezuka raising the future artists, this is actually the page on the back of manga, the Com magazine called Gurako, and or the Grand Champion. This is a place where a lot of young artists will send in their work and get reviewed by professional artists. So artists such as Takemiya Keiko, who is known for the artist who started the BL genre, started his career, on the Grand Con, getting review from the professional artists. So now, kind of jumping ahead, after the discontinuation of Com, understanding the importance of having a space for young artists who communicate professionally and with a professional, Kudako moved to a physical place in 1975 and become the world's largest comic book convention, drawing young artists, professional, fan, publisher, all together in a twice-a-year mass gathering. And it is during this period when the line between professional, the creator, and the consumer, the reader, began to dissipate. So within this place, rather than rely fully on the industry, manga are begin to create by people for the people. So now I am really running out of time, and now this concludes our very short and also kind of rough overlook of the history of manga. So there's still many important historical detail and events that are not covered, but hopefully with what we know, we can kind of start formulating our answer to just how manga was able to capture the interest of so many. So cartoon manga was first there as a new form of art and also new technology to kind of for both social enlightenment and also entertainment. But what make it great, especially with the work with Beagle and also Rakuten, is this is a work that is creating for everyone. Our work is created for everyone. And for the comic manga as well, it is again start with something that's kind of tool for comfort and healing for the children after the war, and later on become an entertainment for the masses. Later on, with the experimentation of many great artists, a door was open for everyone to kind of have a chance to participate in the creation process. although in the West or in the US, I mean, the door hasn't opened for us yet. An art that is that was made with care and consideration for its reader. I think for something like art like this, I think there is really, I think, no reason not to love manga. Okay, so I'm sorry, I am a little bit over time, so I am gonna stop this and then give my mic to Amani, and we can kind of start our Q&A section.
Thank you so much, Mr. Yamato, for your wonderful presentation. And thank you so much for going through, the various artists and the various time periods in which manga has essentially progressed. So to jump right into our Q&A portion, the first question comes from Amit Newfield. What is the difference between manga and anime?
Anime and manga, I think really depend on the perspective. So I think anime is really when we are kind of looking at a kind of Japanese from the Japanese point of view, anime is, I mean, the word itself is kind of the shortened word of the word animation. I mean, it's kind of hard to say animation all the time when you're talking about anime, but I think anime is like animation. So when it comes to the situation in the US, like I think I mentioned earlier, is by association, because although manga start early in Japan, the animation came later. But in the US, I mean, how people access, how children access, I mean, this kind of Japanese style or actually begin with anime. So I think anime in the West becoming kind of this umbrella term that describe the style of a Japanese kind of illustrated work. So animation or not necessarily animation that is how I guess most of us outside Japan use the word anime. But for Japan, I mean, yeah, I mean it's animation. I think this is kind of Pacific media that is different from the manga that is mostly on paper.
Thank you so much. So the next question also comes from Amit Newfield. Is the encyclopedia on how to draw manga still in print?
So the Hokuzai manga, I think there is a reprint several years ago, but if you go to the National Dire Library, so that's pretty much the National Congress Library in Japan, those are actually available free for, I mean, access online digitally. So maybe not in print, but you can still see that, I think, read that online.
Thank you. The next question comes from Eleanor Yamaguchi. What about the Japanese fart battles of Edo period art? Is that not considered to be a starting point of manga from a political commentary perspective?
Comics. I think it is, but I think right now, I think there's kind of the Edo period is kind of what we consider the prehistory of manga. Of course, I mean the stylization and also kind of way of storytelling. Yes, I think there is a lot of connection. But I think really what happened with the ukiyo-e print not being considered manga, it is a problem. It is a problem. But for the now, the work that we know we can kind of for sure say, I think they have connection with manga. It's really kind of by association, like someone like Bigo, I think during the time, I mean, right after Utopia, making it associated. So yeah, I think those could be considered manga if there's more scholar willing to kind of make that argument for it. But media wise, I think it's really manga will be defined on by the technology and also kind of how it spread around Japan. And yeah, Edo period print, I think, and compared to the newspaper, which is kind of spread more widely, I think I mean, Edo, I don't know, I think ukiyo print is probably more localized than the widespread manga in a later period. But I mean, you are correct to point out, I think there's similarity, so should be considered manga, but need to find someone to argue for that.
Thank you. The next question comes from Hugh Hyun Tran. In your opinion, how will AI technology and content censorship affect the art of manga today, especially the creativity of manga artists, the mangaka? Thank you so much.
The thing about, AI, I think is very interesting because I also kind of teach how to draw manga, how to create manga. A lot of time we think about, I think, of course, we're talking about art. I think also most of the time we think about visual art, but manga in essence, I think it's not only about art itself, it's also about storytelling. So you have to, when you're telling a story, I think this is a communication. I think in terms of AI technology, how the application what we're using, does it necessarily make communication with people, or is it just, I think at this stage it seems like they kind of just showcase the ability we can do. But for a manga to be a great manga, it need to be able to speak to people either by visual or by storytelling. So yeah, unless people can figure out how to really make a good manga, make a good conversation with using manga, I think right now, I think there's still a long way. There's still a long way for, I think we should be too worried about AI, at least in my opinion. I think there's still the art of manga is still hard to replace by people are just using it as a tool.
Thank you so much. The next question comes from Catherine Mazur. But wasn't the big manga magazine era of the 60s and 70s really started by the woman manga artists? It was shoujo manga that really pushed the artwork forward, wasn't it?
Shoujo manga definitely pushed the art for a lot. The thing about 60s magazine, shoujo manga magazine, is women's artists really begin to kind of have a lot of influence. I mean, during the 60s, but I think the manga magazine, because during the 50s, there are a lot of magazines. I mean, there are already a lot of magazines during the time. And the rise of kind of the magazine for girl is actually artists, young girl who grew up reading, manga, who was supposed to make for a girl, but by men. And they're angry that, hey, I think this is kind of manga made with men's point of view of what girls should be reading. So yeah, the big boom of like shoujo manga magazine do happen in the 60s, but I think they are already some magazine happening in the 1950s. So yeah, they are kind of happening at the same time, but unfortunately, I think during the earlier day, I think 40 and 50, there are not a lot of women artists. But because of that, I think people, the young girl who read manga start drawing manga, and then they start becoming professional artists in the 60s.
Thank you so much. The next question comes from Vivian Ning. Um, what are your thoughts about manga adaptation into other media? For example, drama or anime, and the recent news about the manga artist Ashihara Hinako.
I think this is a very, very sad situation, but I think right now at the moment is kind of becoming a Me Too movement for mangaka because although we kind of make this consumption of adaptation and not even just the live action but also animation, we didn't know the process of how this is created. I mean, what are the process, how artists going to when they are uh sharing pretty much their work with other group. So now I think it is a very difficult time, but by I think knowing more, I think the future, I think people will have to be more careful, and hopefully mangaka will get the respect they deserve when it comes to uh people using their work.
Thank you so much. The next question comes from Olga Strizevkaya. Kaya, sorry. Did art of Kim Shibai influence the development of manga as a genre? And I believe this is one of your former students.
So Kami Spy, yes. I think Mizuki Shigeru I kind of briefly mentioned in one of the Gekiga artists. He actually started out, I think after the war, I mean, he lose one of his arm. He actually started out as a kamishibai artist, kind of. So kamishibai is like the paper theater where like uh people will create their own drawing and put it in a box and perform in front of the children. So yes, there are definitely influence. And also another thing about Amish is like during the 50, I think at the beginning of my presentation, there is like this really broad umbrella term of what manga is during the 50. So yeah, Kamishibai during the time, I think there will people will consider, I think will probably also call them manga. And within my research, I have a lot of professors who are also doing Kamishibai uh research in context of its relationship with manga. So yeah, there's definitely influence and connection. People are working here and there.
The next question comes from Jeffrey Nathan Dolopans. Um, why are some anime and manga characters names different between Japan and abroad? For example, Mega Man is known as Rockman in Japan. Astro Boy is known as Atom in Japan.
Localization, because I mean there are a lot of I think right now they are slowly doing better, but it's just I think during especially during the 80s and 90s, they are just not sure will people be able to pronounce that name or also feel kind of odd to have it. So yeah, it's a really weird process. Doesn't they kind of just repackage the package. I mean, to their kind of the thought of the time of how okay this will work or this will not. But yeah, it is strange and how they do that. But I think yeah, in the past there are marketing team making the decision, and the marketing team normally doesn't have that much, I mean, knowledge or actually experience with the product they're working. So yeah, probably just make out the name during the time. But now we definitely see more shift to kind of following what is, originally there.
Thank you so much. Cleo Ding asked, the influence of magazine editors, or sorry, magazine editors and response to readers' demands also plays a key process in shaping the story content. Is this something quite unique to the Japanese manga?
I think editor, I think I was trained as a chosen speculator trader back in the US. I mean, there is always so artists are on the side that create artwork, but editor kind of are in the role to kind of deal with marketing and see is this work going to sell or not? So I think they are thinking about that. So yeah, I think in Japan definitely, I mean, there is a lot of influence for magazine itself. They do have so a particular genre, they do have a certain format they kind of trying to protect and keep so they can sell, they can make sure their customer are kind of used to what they're seeing. But yeah, I think this is not just for I think Japan. I think read any publication work. I think editors' role are really it's also to checking the marketing and also really the livelihood of artists is it making money or not.
Maybe this is the last question, but Patricia Yarrow asked, to my eyes, today's anime and most manga all look essentially the same. Are there any new trends in sight for a broader creativity?
Product creativity, I think I don't have time to do the last few slides, but future manga, what is happening is like for a long time we are used to the comic format. I mean the long graphic novel format. But right now, I think during the after the 2000, after the really the beginning of age of internet, we have this four places. I think from beside our working place and like living environment, have this virtual place out there. So and when it comes to creativity, I think one thing with internet is like the easy access, but what is becoming something new in Japan is the what we call essay manga. Essay manga exists in the past, but essay manga are although they're nonfiction manga, but essay manga are the type of nonfiction manga about it's kind of like someone's personal essay talking about their own experience. And those are usually very short, kind of like one single page, and sometimes they are comic strip. And you see them popping a lot on places like Twitter. And about people kind of making manga, they don't a lot of time they are kind of just individual. It doesn't have that much knowledge or like I mean technical skill in terms of creating a word. But again, I think the essence of manga is about storytelling, it's about communication. So I mean with social media, I think this kind of really fast-paced communication, I think essay manga is something that is I think happening for about 10 years, but this is something that is going to be new and definitely worth uh take a look. And also I think at the end, I think I was saying that uh the creativity of Komike is not opening out for the West yet, but with internet, with social media, this could be a possibility for more communication between, I think, of what manga media could be, I mean, in the future.
Thank you so much, Mr. Yamato, for your wonderful presentation today and for answering the majority of our questions. There was a lot, but thank you so much for your kind responses and also taking time out of your day to be with us. And everyone, thank you so much for your wonderful questions. I apologize that we were not able to get to all of them today. And once again, thank you to our program sponsor, the Japan Foundation New York. Once again, thank you everyone for joining us today. We really appreciate your support each week. Once again, thank you so much, Mr. Yamato, for joining us. We hope everyone will join us again next week. Please take care and thank you once again, everyone. Have a nice rest of your day. Thank you.